The number one thing is to not force people to do it your way. When you give them the flexibility to do it their way, that you'll usually get the best results out of it. Give people the assets that they need. If it makes sense to set up an archive of images or of sample posts or whatever it is, do that and make them aware of how to go about doing it if they are interested in doing it. But then also don't micromanage it. Be okay with stepping back and say, I trust you, like we hired you because we trust you and we believe in your abilities and we think you have something to add to the table. And that's all you need to create content is like the ability to bring something to the table. And so I think striking that balance of being helpful, but also leaving it up to the employee is going to be better for your brand, better for your retention, and it's just going to make for better content ultimately.
Welcome to the second episode of Season 2 of the Internal Marketing Podcast. I'm your host, Kerry-Ann Stimson, and I'm happy to welcome you back to another episode. This is the podcast where we flip the marketing conversation from external to internal, where we talk about all things having to do with how we can engage and empower employees to become advocates of the company brand. And of course, Season 2 is sponsored by Workshop. And you know that we can't talk about internal marketing without talking about employee advocacy, right? But of course, building an employee advocacy program doesn't just happen overnight. It means that you need to be creating a stream of positive and engaging content to get your employees bought in and to encourage them to start sharing it. The best place to create that content is with Workshop. Workshop is an internal marketing platform for creating beautifully branded employee-specific campaigns. It replaces any internal email tool that you have, and of course it integrates with the other communication channels that your team uses the most, including Slack, SharePoint, and Microsoft Teams. To find out more about Workshop, head over to useworkshop.com/marketing. I've included the link in the show notes, and there you'll be able to learn not only more about Workshop, but you'll be able to download their free complete guide to building an employee advocacy program of your very own. Today's topic is very exciting, and of course I have another awesome guest. All my guests are awesome. I discovered her on LinkedIn, and if you're a LinkedIn marketing person like me, yeah, you know her name. She's Camille Trent. She is head of content at Dooley, but she provides awesome content every single day that helps marketers and anybody really who is interested in creating content either for their own personal brands or for the companies that they work for or companies that they own to create great content. And I thought, hey, Camille would be a great person to have this conversation with because certainly I've found when we talk about employee brand advocacy or employee content marketing, a lot of the times employees become totally shell-shocked by the fact that they have to create content. You know, everybody wants to build a great brand. And of course, we want to build a great company brand. But the whole matter of content creation, content development, is usually what holds people back. And it tends to be a bit of a showstopper when we talk about employee content marketing. So Camille is here to share her thoughts and some tips on how we can be better at empowering employees, empowering people to become better at creating content. Hi, Camille. Thank you so much for joining me.
Yeah, it's great to be here. Thank you, Kerry-Ann. And thank you for that intro. I'm going to do my best to live up to it.
Oh, I'm sure you will. Where are you joining us from? Of course, I'm in Kingston, Jamaica. Where are you joining us from?
I'm here in Denver, Colorado area.
Oh, awesome. Wonderful. I love the fact that these are international conversations and we get to connect with folks all over the world. Okay, great. So Camille's content is your life, if I may say that. At least that's how it seems when I follow your great stuff on LinkedIn, especially. But I'm sure you're very familiar with what's happening with content creation generally and the fact that companies, more and more companies, including on LinkedIn and even on Twitter as well, have been leveraging their employees or encouraging employees even sometimes to generate their own content. And of course, it's to the benefit ultimately to the company brand, but the personal brand of the employees benefit as well. Could you kind of start out the conversation level set, just kind of share what are you seeing as happening right now on the landscape when we talk about employee content marketing or employee brand advocacy, as it's sometimes more formally called?
Yeah, so I would say, like most things in marketing, you see a handful of companies doing it really well, and then you don't really see anything else because because it's not visible. So that's kind of in a nutshell, like what I'm seeing. There's like a handful of companies that I'm like, yeah, they're everywhere. Like I see them everywhere. Not necessarily just their CEO or even their like C-suite, or I'm seeing just different people from the company, like G2, Gong, some of those names you see all over, and it gives this effect. They are all over. And in some ways, like it can give the effect, especially for high growth companies, that they're bigger than they are, which can be a big advantage as well. And so that's kind of what I'm seeing. Yeah. And then if you don't have that, if you're not all in, then I also see a little bit of the leadership team representing like their companies as well, but not necessarily the employees, which is great as well. I think is anyone that it can post and that especially can bring some of the message from the company or some of the brand like into their content in a natural way, then that's always impressive kind of when I see that. And then the other thing that I've started seeing more of that's interesting is, I'll shout out to Ryan on our team, Ryan Scalera. He's an incredible salesperson to begin with, but is also, I would say, like a content marketer. He's a creative, and that he creates what I started calling product-led music videos or music content, right? And so it's as interesting as it seems, where he'll do parody songs on Dooley, right? Or on like some of the prospects that we're trying to reach out to, or people that we're trying to get to pay attention to us, people that we think would be a good partner, in general, brands that we admire. So he'll get pretty creative in either pinpointing a specific feature and literally singing about it. He had one that was a parody on the Moana song, where he talked about a specific feature of ours, and he had other ones that were directed to like a specific company, where he talks directly to them. And so that's like a fun thing that I'm seeing now too, is just how can we talk about brand and even talk about product, which everyone really shies away from in social, because if you do it wrong, it's really not a good move. And so, especially in organic social, but if you do it right, it can have the exact opposite effect.
So thanks for sharing all of that, Camille. It's really an interesting time with content and what folks are doing and how creative people are getting and really driving a lot of engagement. And I wanted to hop back to something you would have shared earlier, that, as you said, there are some companies and some people that are doing it really well. When they stand out, you called a couple of great names on LinkedIn. I know Gong for sure. Everybody always talks about them and their respective employees, team members, who they actually celebrate and empower them to do their thing, and they're doing it very well. I guess my next question is, why do you think more companies aren't doing this? At the end of the day, you would think this is so beneficial. We spoke about people like Chris Walker, Megan, the folks at Gong. We speak about companies who are doing it well. And it's really auguring well for both the company brand and the personal brands of the people who are doing it. Why do you think more companies are not kind of jumping on this employee advocacy or employee content marketing train? And what do you think needs to happen to change that?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. So I think it's a couple things. I mean, ultimately, you can't force anyone to do anything, and it's detrimental, I think, to try, and if it comes across that way. So I've seen it work the most successfully when your brand attracts the type of people that are already posting and are already interested in those types of plays, like in that type of marketing. If you're running your business that way, and you're like, Chris is a good example of just leading by example, right? And so he's kind of shown that it works. And if you're interested in, building your own personal brand or presence, then he can help you do that, right? And he kind of has that playbook. And so because of that, I think it attracts those type of people to work for that company, and then it sort of fuels itself. So I think that's part of it, is just on the recruiting side of things, and on the brand and internal brand side of things. So what kind of a company, really, like, what is your reputation? What is your brand, right? And what do people think it would be like to work there? And are they seeing the benefits from sort of advocating like on the brand's behalf? And then I think there's also like different definitions on that. So I think sometimes when people try and jump into these programs, they're like, oh, we have to post about us. Like everyone should be posting about our product. Everyone should be, trying to drive business, which they should. But it's typically, especially in B2B, it's not a direct response type thing. thing of like posting like you're posting an ad is probably not going to work. In the same way that if an ad sounds like an ad, it's also not going to work, right? And so going back to that, how are we getting creative about that? And also, how are we not putting any pressure on the employees to do it? So for instance, if you have other teams that are not in marketing or not in sales, but they have a lot of knowledge in the field, in their specific field. So for instance, like CS or product, they can just post about CS and product, or they can post about personal development, just letting them know that they can post about anything, and also realizing as a company that all of those things help, especially if you are giving them assets. So for instance, you're giving them like a photo shoot. If everyone has like their branded backdrop or whatever on their picture, like I've seen Drift do this well, and I think I've seen a Gong do this as well. So then I start to recognize, oh, okay, like red background, blue background, whatever it is. And so you get that in the same way that you'd get that benefit from an ad. And then also in the headline, if you're encouraging people, and they'll kind of do this anyways, to say, Camille, head of content at Dually or whatever, or you do like their company tagline of, one of the benefits of the brand in your tagline. So people kind of click to find out what you do and what the company does.
Absolutely. I'm glad you started to talk about different approaches that companies can take. The first thing is, I think, as you say, if somebody doesn't want to do it, they won't do it. There's also an approach that you could take where you say, hey, you can probably be free to post about something that is more near and dear to your heart. That way it probably comes off as a little bit more authentic. But at the same time, if you want to support your team with kind of some templated stuff, as I like to say, that they can take and morph into something that again sounds like it's coming from them, or is certainly more connected to what they're passionate about. I think that's also a great approach. What you just ended with is the fact that folks can really dive in and do this if it's something they're passionate about or something they're comfortable doing. And from where I sit, Camille, if I may get a little bit personal with your experience, I believe you've enjoyed tremendous success creating your own content on LinkedIn about content, because that's your area of focus. But would you be willing to share how your content creation journey, distribution journey has been, how it's impacted both your personal brand and how it has impacted the brands of the companies that you've worked with? Could you share with us your own experience of that impact?
Yeah. So I'm trying to think of how far back to rewind, but it sort of started with some of these things that I'm talking about, of one, seeing the potential of the platform, seeing people that are doing really well on it. So there wasn't one person I think that like stood out at first. I just knew that there was this sort of blue ocean, like there was just this opportunity there, because it felt like, there wasn't anyone necessarily owning it, and there wasn't a ton of amazing content, or at least it felt like there was a space that I could play in there. And then there were other people like the Dave Gerhardts and Chris Walkers of the world too that were doing it really well and that had built a following in a short amount of time. But really for me, I was managing the company LinkedIn page where I was working and trying to see how I could build that. And so there was my incentive there. And then there was also just me trying to support the sales team too, and seeing that as an opportunity to do that. Like if I could show them the potential of LinkedIn by doing it myself, then that was going to be a better sort of argument than just saying, hey, like go ahead and start posting. And also it's when I could give them information to repost or to post themselves, and really explaining the benefit of restating whatever it was, restating the press release or restating the learnings from the blog in their own words, or posting a picture, like that could go a long way. So really just trying to like show rather than tell. And so that's kind of where I started, is I'll figure this out myself and I'll experiment with it. And in doing that, then I found like a lot of other unexpected benefits of, I'm finding that my feed like is more marketers now, right? And I'm finding other people that I want to talk with, right? And I want to have these types of chats with, and I want to be able to bounce ideas off. And so that led to sort of me reaching out to people reaching out to me, sort of just making friends. And so that was a big benefit. And then the other big benefit was just noticing patterns, what types of posts did well, like what tactics or just formatting like was working better. And then so that was fun for me too. And but ultimately I think like the reason that I stuck with it, and I think what I would tell people like when they start for like a month or two and they feel like they've put in a decent amount of work but aren't necessarily seeing the results, is that it's one, just knowing that it's an iterative process, and going back to like Malcolm Gladwell's like 10,000 hour rule. Like there's a part in there about it's not just about repeating the same activity, but it's about having like a purpose in that and iterating. And for instance, piano, like focusing on like the specific thing that you're getting wrong instead of just like replaying the song, just focusing on the area that you're getting stuck with, because you know the rest of it, right? Like you're like there's parts of it that you're probably really good at about LinkedIn or about creating content, but maybe like you need to focus on your headline or you need to focus on some sort of call to action, right? Just realizing like where you're missing and fine-tuning that. There's that part of it. And then there's also just knowing that it's a long-term play of and like getting those repetitions in. So for me, like that really was like the biggest thing. It's just deciding that you're going to do it every day or however much that you say that you're going to do it, and being consistent about it. And the reason that I stuck with it was because I was in content and I liked creating content. I would kind of do it for a writing exercise too. When I start to get burnt out, one, like now I will just like allow myself to take breaks. Like I was on vacation last week, I took a break, and like knowing that I'm not going to completely fall off the wagon, that I'm going to like make myself like get back into it, get back in the swing of things. And so kind of like having grace with yourself, but then just promising that you're going to do it. Make some sort of, not calendar, but some sort of a consistent effort to do it. And if you're a content person like me, just think about it as a writing exercise. Like think about it as like a way to get better at writing. And if you are a video or a content creation person or somebody that wants to start up either their own business or to be a freelancer or just have like a side hustle of some sort on top of your full-time job. A lot of people do this. Knowing that just showing up every day and just practicing both helps you be top of mind, like because you're showing up every day, but then also helps you learn and to get better sort of like at your craft. And so when I think of it as a writing exercise, one, like my content gets better because I'm thinking about it as a piece of content and not just like a thing to do. And then I'm also learning something along the way. Like it sort of forces me to like do some sort of research or talk to more people and to create better content that way and to create sort of more functionally better content.
And by extension, can you say if the company brands that you work for, does their brand get to, however, inadvertently come along for the ride with what you've enjoyed as success in your own content journey? Because I know, like, if I may confess, it's because of you why I learned about Marketer Hire. I would have never known. And as a matter of fact, it's just recently I'm seeing their YouTube ads come up when I'm watching my YouTube videos on my phone. But it was because of you I even heard about it in the first place. So I'm sure there must have been some benefit to them as well.
Yeah, no, that's awesome to hear. So that kind of answers the question, right? But I will say that it's not just a fluke. Like I see this across the board, and I see this when I talk to, other people on my team. So like Zoe and Ryan and Mark, I mean, plenty of people on our team are all good examples of, I know that they get personal DMs directly to them of like, I loved that music video. Tell me more about Dual Wheeler and so he'll get, Ryan specifically, since he's in sales, will get demo requests or get just the conversation started through the DMs, like an inbound DM, like not an outbound one oftentimes, because of the type of content that he's creating on LinkedIn and because of the engagement that it stirs, because of how creative it is, but also how it's relating back to the product. And then Zoe, who's our community and partnerships manager, same thing. She does a great job of starting those conversations, of jumping into the comments. And so she gets tons of inbound requests for partnering up on projects, but also learning more about Dually. So yeah, all of that stuff helps and drives like real awareness and even sales.
Awesome. Good stuff. For all the marketers listening, for those of us who have members on the team, and I'm talking team meaning the broader company team, the employee base, and we know we have employees who want to start generating their own content perhaps, or just getting started even sharing content or repurposing content and distributing content as part of either a broader employee content marketing activity, brand advocacy, or just to build their own personal brands. Do you have any practical ways or advice that you could share for marketers who want to empower employees who want to get started?
Yeah, that's another good question. So, the easiest way to sort of like dip your toe in, especially on social, is to start commenting on things. And so, at the company level, that's something that they could suggest, especially because it doesn't require them to create content or create some sort of like system. Although that would be another thing, is to create archive of assets that they can use. But I think the number one thing, is encouraging people to just jump in on conversations, right? And to comment there when something strikes like their interest. It sort of accomplishes two things in that you're able to share your views on something, especially if it's a comment on, if you're in sales, like a sales related thing, if you're in marketing, a marketing related thing. So you could steer it that way if you wanted to. But again, I think it's best to just let people do what they're going to do, comment on the things they want to comment on. But I think it allows you to dip your toe in, to give your point of view, but then also to just not be as nervous about creating content. It is a form of creating content to comment on something, and it will give you inspiration. That person's topic now inspired a comment, and now it's your point of view, and then that can be somewhat validated in if other people like that comment, if other people comment on that comment. Now you can see like if there's interest in your point of view, and you can use that to then create a post on it. Or even if you don't get as much engagement as you think, you could step back and think why that was, or if you need to add more context to it to make it more interesting. But either way, it gives you an idea for your post and for how you can start creating your own content. So that's kind of the number one advice that I give now, is just to start there, because it just makes it really simple.
Great, thank you. For those folks who are in this space already, they're pretty much, I have found, probably they have a kind of a cadence with it when it comes to posting and producing content, either for their own personal brands or for the company brands they represent. Do you have any additional tips that you could share how they could probably up their game for those who are kind of out the gate already?
Yeah, I can kind of just recap my tips, I guess. So number one is just get started. And for me, it was, different people are different how they function. But for me, it was, if I'm going to do this, I'm going to do it. If I'm not going to do it, like, I'm not going to do it at all. It's one or the other. And so for me, it was just kind of flipping the switch of like, okay, starting today, I'm going to post every day. And I did that for like 6 months, and still for the most part do that, but sort of allow myself to take breaks when I need it, or take weekends off. And so just starting and committing to it, that's like the number one thing. And then if it is scary, and it probably like will be a little bit scary at the beginning, just that idea of rejection and just anxiety, I think, over putting yourself out there. Again, like, I think that the easiest way is to think about it as just a community and a way to meet like-minded people, and to have conversations, and to have sort of friendly debates. And again, I think that the best way to do that is to just be in the comments, right? And so it allows you to support someone else's content that you like and that maybe you want to be friends with and have a conversation with, and then also kind of like allows you to get comfortable with sort of putting your point of view out there, and to just think analytically about what that comment will be. And that's kind of the mindset I think you need for creating content. And again, like that comment can just turn into the post. Like in some cases it is, or it allows you to at least have a thought starter to then write the post. And so if you're just jumping in, I think that is the best way to go about it.
All right. Thank you so much for those. I'm taking notes for sure on this side. Boy, Camille, this has been such a great conversation, talking about how folks can empower themselves and how marketers can empower their team and their colleagues to just be better at generating content. Of all the things that you would have shared today, Camille, what for you would you say is the biggest takeaway you'd want our listeners to come away with, having listened to this discussion?
Yeah, I think the number one thing is to not force people to do it your way. I was talking to to Jay, who is the founder of Swipely and a friend of mine, about influencer marketing, right? And he was talking about how people who like creating or who want to create and want to do something like this, that when you give them the flexibility to do it their way, that you'll usually get the best results out of it. So that would be kind of the advice that I would give on the brand side, is give people the assets that they need, right? Like if it makes sense to kind of set up, an archive of images or of sample posts or whatever it is, do that and make them like aware of how to go about doing it if they are interested in doing it. But then also don't micromanage it. Just be okay with sort of like stepping back and say, I trust you, like we hired you because we trust you and we believe in your abilities and we think you have something to add to the table. And that's all you need to create content, is like the ability to bring something to the table. And so I think sort of striking that balance of being helpful but also leaving it up to the employee is going to be better for your brand, better for your retention, and it's just going to make for better content ultimately.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Camille. I think this has been such a great conversation, lots of great nuggets and takeaways. Of course, I always wrap my discussions by asking each of my awesome guests, how can we, the internal marketing tribe listening, how can we support you?
Yeah, I think just spreading the word about Duly. I'll plug it for a second in that we're kind of like changing the sales game over here, in that most salespeople can only spend about a third of their time actually selling. And that's just because there's so much tech work and so much admin work that's now involved, that's now an expected part of a salesperson's job. And it really shouldn't be that way and doesn't need to be that way. And what our CEO, Chris, what he discovered was just a way to stay very like organized in his notebook. So I would say that Duly even started out on paper in like the way that he was able to conduct his day-to-day and stay really organized and focus on the right parts of the opportunity, and then turning that into a digital platform, which is like the first revenue workspace for salespeople, so that it connects everything, so that you're not having to go into Salesforce afterwards and re-enter all of the things that you just found on the call, that it's really like a space that works like you do, like where it syncs everything, all your notes automatically, it syncs the fields that you need to Salesforce. It lets you ping people in Slack, and this is like all happening in one workspace. And so because of that, people are able to spend more time selling, which is our ultimate goal, is just less time doing data entry and work that doesn't get you paid, and more time doing the work that's meaningful for the business, that's the work that they actually want you doing, while still giving the sales leaders the analytics and the insights that they need to understand where opportunities are, and just allowing salespeople to get paid and to like their work.
Sounds good. So yes, folks, definitely we have to check out Duly. And if you're not following Camille on LinkedIn, you got to follow her as well. You're on Twitter too as well, aren't you, Camille? I think I saw you posted that you're over there as well.
Yes. Yeah. So I am on Twitter. Thanks for shouting that out, because I'm not super active there, but but I am trying to get more active there. So yeah.
Okay, great. One thing at a time. My next question would probably be, where do you find an extra hour in the day to do everything that you do? But totally understood that we can't do it all, eh? But thank you so much, Camille, for your time. It's very much appreciated. Thank you so much for your awesome nuggets that you shared. And I know that a lot of folks they would have gotten some great takeaways for themselves in terms of how we can empower employees to generate better content, how employees can get started in doing content, and how companies, I think, need to look at this thing a little bit differently as well, because there's so many great benefits. And so I think it's also useful to know that we are really broadening the conversation for more folks to hear about the great benefits and kind of jump in and get into the game themselves. So thank you so much, Camille. All the very best to you. And that's it for today's episode. Thank you for joining me. And of course, tune in for another awesome episode of the Internal Marketing Podcast as we flip the marketing conversation from external to internal, talking about everything we need to know about engaging and empowering employees to become advocates of the company brand. The Internal Marketing Podcast is available on your favorite podcasting app.